The sheriff's deputy had his gun drawn, pointing at Tango's head, and Reese Calloway knew she had about 3 seconds to stop this from ending in blood. But that was 4 days ago, and the story really begins 2 weeks earlier. On the morning Reese took the foreman job at Broken Creek Ranch and walked straight into a 20-year feud she didn't understand. The November wind off the Montana high country carried the smell of snow and cattle when Reese Calloway stepped out of her 15-year-old pickup at the Broken Creek Ranch gates. She stood 5'7" in her scarred work boots, lean-muscled and weathered at 28, with sun-streaked brown hair pulled back in a braid and gray-green eyes that had learned to read terrain and threat assessment in equal measure. A faded scar ran from her right temple to her cheekbone, shrapnel from the IED that ended her Army career and killed 3 of her unit. Beside her, Tango pressed against her leg, an 80-pound German shepherd whose black coat bore the white patches of old burned scars along his left flank. His dark amber eyes tracked everything with the focused intensity of a dog who'd spent 6 years in military service before the explosion that injured them both. His right front leg had a slight hitch in its gait, nerve damage, but not enough to slow him down when it mattered. "Easy," she murmured, though the command was as much for herself. The ranch spread across 5,000 acres of grassland and timber, bordered by national forest to the west and the Talbot property to the east. Reese had taken the foreman job site unseen, needing work that came with housing and didn't ask questions about the nightmares that still woke her at 3 a.m. She'd been working day labor at feedlots for the past year, sleeping in her truck with Tango, watching her savings evaporate. This was her last chance to stop falling. Malcolm Brenner met her at the main house, 73 years old and built like the mountains behind him, solid, weathered, immovable. His handshake was firm, his eyes shrewd but not unkind. "You know cattle?" No preamble. "Grew up on a ranch in Wyoming. Before I enlisted. Foreman's a big job for someone your age. I led 20 soldiers in hostile territory. I can handle 30 head of cattle and whatever ranch hands you've got." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. "Had to fire my last foreman 2 weeks ago. Caught him cutting fence on the eastern border. Tried to drive my cattle onto Talbot land. Been at war with Victor Talbot since before you were born. He wants this ranch, always has. Tried to buy me out 6 times. Now he's trying to destroy me. Why? Water rights. Broken Creek runs through my property, feeds into his. He's expanding his operation, needs more water than he's entitled to." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "He's been filing false complaints with the county, claiming my cattle are diseased, that I'm polluting the creek. All lies. But lies told loud enough and long enough start to sound like truth. Leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and whether you've ever known someone who fought for what was right even when everyone turned against them." Reese looked at the land, the house that needed paint, the fences that needed mending. "Work. Purpose. I can start today. Your dog military?" "Army K-9. Patrol and detection. Retired." She didn't mention the PTSD diagnosis they'd both carried out of Afghanistan, how they kept each other alive on the bad nights. "He stays with you. I don't trust anyone, but I trust a soldier's dog." Malcolm gestured toward a small cabin beyond the main barn. "Foreman's quarters. Bathroom works, electricity solid. Pay's not great, but it's steady. I'll take it." What Reese couldn't know, what no one could know, was that in 11 days, Malcolm Brenner would be found dead in the north pasture with wounds that looked like a dog attack, that Tango would be accused of the killing, and that the only evidence that would save them both would be something the K-9 dragged back from the forest, a work glove that didn't belong to anyone on Broken Creek Ranch. But that morning, Reese just unpacked her few possessions while Tango cleared the cabin room by room, a routine they'd maintained since leaving the service. She hung her father's old ranch coat on the door, set her mother's photo on the windowsill, the only family she had left, and reported to the barn to meet the crew. There were 3 ranch hands, 2 college kids working for summer money who'd never make it through Montana winter, and Cole Hartley, 48, who'd worked Broken Creek for 15 years and watched Reese with barely concealed resentment. "Boss hired a woman," he said to no one in particular, "and a soldier girl at that." "Foreman," Reese corrected quietly. "And if we're going to have a problem, Cole, let's have it now instead of later." He spat tobacco juice. "No problem, long as you know how things work around here. Then explain it to me." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Malcolm's stubborn. Won't admit when he's beaten. Talbot's got more money, more lawyers, more pull with the county. This ranch is dying. Everyone knows it but the old man. Smart folks would be looking for the exit. Are you looking for the exit, Cole? I'm looking for someone who can actually run this place. Jury's still out on you. Tango's low growl cut through the barn's silence. Cole took a step back. He doesn't like disrespect, Reese said evenly. Neither do I. Now let's get to work. That night, alone in the cabin with Tango stretched across her feet, Reese studied the ranch maps Malcolm had given her. The property lines, the water rights, the disputed eastern border where Broken Creek ran through both properties. Something felt wrong. Too neat, too convenient. The way ambushes in Kandahar felt wrong before the shooting started. She just didn't know what she was looking for yet. The first dead calf appeared on day 4. Reese found it at dawn in the north pasture, throat torn, blood soaking the frozen ground. The wounds looked wrong, too precise, too clean. She'd seen predator kills. This wasn't one. Malcolm stood over the carcass, his face gray. Wolves. Maybe. Reese crouched, studying the marks. But I don't think so. Wolves would have fed. This was killed and left. Talbot. You have proof. I have 30 years of that man's character. Malcolm's hands trembled with rage, or age, or both. He's escalating. Tried to spook me, force my hand. Reese called the county extension office, reported the kill, requested an investigation. The agent who came out spent 10 minutes examining the calf, then turned to study Tango with cold calculation. That's a big dog. German Shepherd. Military trained. Retired K9, Reese said carefully. Why? These wounds could be from a large dog. You keep him secured at night. He sleeps in my cabin. You didn't do this. The agent made notes. I'll need to file a report. State law requires quarantine of any dog suspected in livestock kills. Suspected by who? You just got here. I'm just doing my job, Miss Calloway. But his eyes said something else, something that reminded Reese of the base bureaucrats who tried to have Tango euthanized after the explosion, claiming he was too damaged for service, too dangerous for civilian life. She'd fought them then. She'd fight now. After the agent left, Malcolm pulled her aside. Victor Talbot sits on the county livestock board. His nephew runs the extension office. You see how this works? Reese saw. She just didn't know how to fight it yet. The second calf died on day 7. Same pattern, same wounds, same placement in the north pasture near Talbot's fence line. This time the county sent the sheriff, and Deputy Torres arrived with that look, the one that said his mind was already made up. I need to see the dog. Reese stood between Torres and the cabin door. He's secured. He hasn't left the property. You have proof of that. I have my word. That's not proof. Torres's hand rested on his gun. We've got 2 dead calves, Miss Calloway. Pattern's pretty clear. This ends one of 2 ways. Voluntary quarantine pending investigation, or I get a warrant and take the animal by force. Tango was inside the cabin, sensing the threat, his low growl audible through the door. 24 hours, Reese said, her voice steady though her heart hammered. Give me 24 hours to prove he didn't do this. You're not a detective. No, I'm a soldier who knows when she's being set up. Something flickered in Torres's expression, doubt, maybe, or recognition. 24 hours. Then I come back with that warrant, and this gets ugly. After he left, Reese saddled Malcolm's oldest horse and rode the fence line with Tango ranging ahead, his nose working the ground the way he'd been trained to search for explosives and ambush positions. They found the breach at sunset, a section of fence deliberately cut, the wire fresh sheared, leading directly from Talbot property onto Broken Creek land. And there, caught on the bottom wire, was a tuft of tan fur. Not black like Tango's coat, not gray like Wolf's. Tan, like the coat of the 3 cattle dogs Reese had seen in Talbot's yard when she'd driven past his ranch gate last week. She'd bagged the evidence with shaking hands while Tango sat alert beside her, ears forward, focused on something in the darkening forest beyond the fence. His training kick activated, the way he'd alerted to threats in Afghanistan, body tense, head cocked. What is it, boy? He whined once, started forward, then stopped, waiting for her command. Tango, track. The shepherd moved into the trees, and Reese followed, flashlight cutting through the dusk. 50 yards in, Tango stopped at a deadfall log, scratched at something wedged beneath it. A work glove, heavy canvas, stained with what looked like blood, and embroidered on the wrist with 2 letters, VT, Victor Talbot. Reese was reaching for it when the gunshot cracked through the forest. She hit the ground, cavalry reflexes taking over, dragging Tango behind the lock. Another shot, closer, bark exploding off a pine trunk above her head. "That's private property you're on." The voice was male, young, furious. "I'm within my rights." Reese didn't answer, just keyed her phone, praying for signal. 2 bars. She dialed 911, whispered her location, then focused on survival. She had no weapon. Malcolm didn't allow firearms on the property, old-school rancher philosophy. She had a flashlight, a scared dog, and 30 yards of open ground between her and cover. Tango home. The command sent him running, zigzagging, making himself a hard target. She followed, staying low, using trees for cover, while shots punctured the forest behind her. She made it to the fence, rolled under the wire, sprinted for the barn where light and witnesses meant safety. Cole Hartley stood in the barn door, and the expression on his face made everything suddenly, terribly clear. He'd been there the night the cabs died. He had keys to every gate, and he was holding a rifle. "Should have taken the exit when you had the chance," he said quietly. Reese's hand found the fence staple hammer hanging on the barn wall before her conscious mind finished processing the threat. Cole swung the rifle up, but she was already moving, closing distance, using skills drilled into muscle memory in a dozen close-quarters combat courses. The hammer caught the rifle barrel, knocked it wide, the shot blasting into the barn ceiling. She followed through with an elbow to his solar plexus, and Cole went down gasping. Behind her, sirens wailed. Deputy Torres's cruiser screamed into the yard, lights washing everything in red and blue. He came out with his weapon drawn, took in the scene. Reese standing over a gasping Cole, the rifle on the ground. Tango at the fence line, hackles raised. "Everybody down." "Now." Reese dropped the hammer, raised her hands. "He shot at me. In the forest." "Check his rifle. It's been fired." Torres kicked the rifle away from Cole, cuffed him, then turned to Reese. "Start talking." She told him about the cut fence, the first sample, the glove with Talbot's initials. Told him about Cole's comment about exits, about being there every time something went wrong. Torres listened, his expression unreadable, then radioed for backup and headed into the forest himself. He came back 20 minutes later holding the glove in an evidence bag. This was under a log, exactly where Tango found it. Torres studied the German shepherd, who sat calmly now, tension gone, job complete. "Your dog tracked this?" It's what he was trained to do. Find evidence, find threats, find truth. Malcolm emerged from the main house, looking older and more fragile than Reese had ever seen him. "Cole, looks like your foreman was supplementing his income," Torres said. "Someone paid him to sabotage your operation." "The glove suggests who." "Suggestions aren't proof." Cole spat from the back of the cruiser. "And I'm not saying nothing without a lawyer." But 2 days later, faced with the physical evidence and Torres's methodical investigation, Cole broke. He'd been on Talbot's payroll for 6 months, cutting fences, killing calves, planting evidence to frame Tango. The plan had been to force Malcolm to surrender the dog for quarantine and euthanization, breaking the old man's spirit and his foreman's ability to work. Without Reese and Tango, Malcolm would have been vulnerable, isolated, easy to pressure into selling. The third phase, the phase they never reached, had been Malcolm himself. An accident, a fall, an old man's unfortunate death that would leave the ranch without an heir, ripe for acquisition. Victor Talbot was arrested at his ranch, fighting and cursing, insisting he'd only paid Cole to spy, not to kill livestock, not to attempt murder. The state attorney was still sorting through who was lying and who was just morally bankrupt. Reese didn't care. She just wanted the threat gone and her dog safe. 3 months later, Reese stood in the north pasture watching spring green soften the landscape's harsh edges. The calves born that season were healthy, thriving, and Malcolm had hired 2 new ranch hands to replace Cole and the college kids who had fled at the first hint of violence. The legal settlements had come through. Compensation for the attempted killing, restitution for the livestock losses, enough to repair the ranch's infrastructure and secure its future. Talbot had been forced to sell off portions of his own ranch to pay damages, his reputation destroyed, his family named mud in the county. Malcolm appeared beside her, moving slower but somehow more solid than before. Water Commission approved my expansion request. Going to run a new irrigation line to the south section. Could use your input on placement. I thought I was just foreman. You were. Now you're partner. He handed her a folder, legal documents, property transfer papers, making her part owner of Broken Creek Ranch. No family to leave this to when I'm gone. Rather see it go to someone who'll fight for it. Reese felt something crack open in her chest. The ice she'd carried since Afghanistan, since the explosion that killed her team, since the years of drifting and surviving instead of living. Malcolm, I can't. You can. You did. This ranch was dying, and you saved it. He nodded toward Tango, who was sprawled in the sun, utterly content. Both of you saved it. Seems right you get to keep it. That night, Reese sat on the cabin porch with Tango's head in her lap, watching stars emerge over the mountains. The nightmares still came sometimes, the 3 a.m. terrors, but they were softer now, less frequent. The ranch gave her purpose. Tango gave her peace. Malcolm gave her family. She'd spent 3 years after discharge feeling broken, believing the explosion had taken more than her hearing and her team, that it had taken her future too. But maybe broken things could be rebuilt. Maybe the best foundations came from the rubble of what collapsed. Maybe you didn't need to be whole to be worthy of home. A truck turned into the ranch drive, Torres, making his evening check-in. He'd been doing that since the arrest, official business that felt increasingly like something else. He climbed out, coffee in hand, and raised it toward her porch. Thought you might be up. Can't sleep when it's this beautiful. He settled on the porch steps, and Tango's tail thumped once in greeting. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the darkness, and Reese thought about the deputy who'd almost shot her dog, who'd had his mind made up, who'd been willing to follow bad orders, and how he'd chosen to investigate instead. How one person's integrity could change everything. Thank you, she said finally, for listening. Thank your doc. He's the one who found the evidence. He found a glove. You found the truth. Torres smiled. We make a good team. The ranch was quiet. The threats were gone. And for the first time since the explosion, Reese Calloway let herself believe that survival wasn't the ceiling, it was just the floor. That there was more above it, belonging, purpose, maybe even joy. Malcolm's porch light flicked on and off, their signal for morning check-in. Torres finished his coffee, said good night, promised to return for the weekend fence repair. Reese stayed on the porch with Tango, breathing mountain air, feeling her shoulders drop, her jaw unclench. She thought about her mother's photo inside, about the generations of ranchers she'd come from, about how she'd thought she'd left that life behind. But maybe you didn't leave home. Maybe home waited, patient, for you to be ready to return. Tango's head shifted in her lap, his breathing deep and even, and Reese stroked his scarred coat, grateful for the dog who'd saved her as much as she'd saved him. The stars wheeled overhead. The creek sang its endless song.